Hello everyone, my name is Anuj Kumar Prajapati and welcome to lecture 3 of this video series on strength of materials. In the previous lecture, we had a look over certain prerequisites that are required for studying this subject. For example, the free body diagram, the resolution of forces and concept of static equilibrium. Now we shall have a look at certain other topics which are a part of this prerequisite. Let's start with centroid and moment of inertia. We are three-dimensional beings, right? Every object that we deal with in our day-to-day life has three dimensions. That means it occupies some volume and has a length, breadth and a height. And our favorite example, the bread loaf, it is also a 3D object. It has length, breadth and a height and it occupies some volume. Now, to understand the mechanics of any 3D body, we must know where the forces are acting. Exactly at what point we can assume the forces to be acting. And gravity is a very important force, and so therefore we have this concept of the center of gravity. In reality, the mass is not concentrated at this single point, but it is distributed throughout the body. But it is highly impractical to analyze the mass of each and every element. Therefore, we use this concept where we assume that the mass is concentrated at a single point and it is a point mass. Now, let us give some dimensions to our bread loaf. Let us suppose it has an area of cross section A and length L. And let us make very thin slices of this bread loaf along the length L such that we get an individual slice having a cross section area of A and a very small thickness dl. Now, since we are making very thin slices, let us assume that this thickness is so small that you cannot even measure it. It is beyond our capabilities of measuring. So, for practical purposes, we can assume it to be a 2D object or a lamina. Now, when we are dealing with a 2D object, for example, a thin sheet of paper, it is not really practical to measure the dimensions in all the three mutually perpendicular directions. Now, as a result, we cannot really calculate the volume of such an object, and therefore we cannot relate the mass of this object to its size. And therefore, these concepts like center of gravity do not really make sense for a 2D object. But this center of gravity is a very important concept. Whenever we are trying to study the effect of forces on a body, this point plays a very important role, especially when you are trying to determine the conditions of equilibrium. We calculate the moments of all the forces about this point and decide whether the body is in equilibrium or not, and if it's not, what will be the motion acquired by this body. So when dealing with 2D objects or lamina, where we cannot use this concept of center of gravity, we still need a reference point about which we can calculate the moments of the various forces acting on the body. And so we should make use of this concept totally native to 2D shapes known as the centroid. Now let us try to understand this concept of centroid, and for that we shall take a small example of a 2D object or a lamina in the XY plane. Now consider a small element in this lamina having the dimensions dx and dy as shown, and let the position of this element be given by the x and y coordinates. Now we all might know the geometric definition of a centroid, but what physical significance does it have when we are talking about mechanics? So just like the center of gravity, centroid is defined as the point about which the summation of moments of all the forces is zero at equilibrium. And geometrically, the x coordinate of the centroid is given by the ratio of the moment of area about y-axis to its total area. The geometric formula for this centroid is quite straightforward. As you can see here, the AI is the area of each element and xi is the centroid of that corresponding element. For continuous systems, these summations are replaced by the integrals, and each element is infinitesimally small, where the area is given by dx dy. And similarly, the y coordinate of centroid is given by the formula as stated below. Now, as a side note, I would like to revisit something that we discussed in the previous lecture. We made an assumption that the material we are dealing with is homogeneous and isotropic, and we defined homogeneous property as if at various points or at any given point the elastic properties in a given direction are uniform, then the material is said to be homogeneous. But this word homogeneous has a broader concept or a broader meaning. Suppose we take a body, and in that body we consider a very small element, and if this element represents all the properties of the bulk, then we can say that the material is homogeneous. So when I say homogeneous material, I don't just mean that the elastic properties in a given direction are uniform, but I also imply that other material properties such as density, specific heat, etc. are also uniform. Now that we are well versed with the concept of centroid, let us have a look at the moment of inertia. And before understanding the moment of inertia, we shall understand what does inertia mean. So you might remember that in school days we defined inertia as the tendency of a body to be in a state of rest or uniform motion unless an external unbalanced force acts on it. And in very simple terms, you can also define inertia as the resistance to change in velocity. The body won't change the velocity or its state of motion unless it is acted upon by some external disturbance. And here we are talking about the linear velocity. As long as the velocity is constant, the state of motion does not change. And the disturbance that we are talking about here is nothing but force. In practice, it's not necessary that a body will always go under pure translation. Many a times, the motion of a body is actually a combination of translation and rotation. And this rotation can be about any axis in space. Now, to describe this rotational motion, we need certain entities such as the angular velocity, angular acceleration, angular displacement, angular momentum, etc. And if you observe the formulae for these rotational entities, you'll see that the linear velocity is the moment of the angular velocity. The linear acceleration is the moment of angular acceleration, and the momentum, the linear momentum, is the moment of the angular momentum. So basically, every linear entity is the moment of the angular entity. For linear motion, we have the concept of inertia, and for the angular motion, we have defined this concept of the moment of inertia. Together, these two concepts characterize the translational and rotational motion of a body. And the moment of inertia can be defined as the resistance to change in angular motion. Just like for inertia, we had the alternative definition of the resistance to change in the linear velocity. Now, to understand this concept of moment of inertia, let us start with a very simple example with a point mass. Let us suppose we have a point mass as shown in the xy plane, and let it have a rotational motion about this green axis that I have shown. Suppose it has a mass m and its distance from this axis of rotation is small d. So the moment of inertia of this point mass is given by md square. Now, using this same concept, let us try to understand the moment of inertia of a 3D body. Suppose this body is made up of n number of such particles. So the total moment of inertia of this body will be given by the summation of the moment of inertia of the individual particles about that particular axis. And remember, rotation is always about an axis. Without an axis, there is no concept of rotation. Now that we are dealing with 2D or lamina, like previously we saw that the concept of mass doesn't really help us, because you can't really relate the mass of the body with its size, because volume is a 3D concept and mass is given by the density into volume. Therefore, we define here the area moment of inertia, and the formula for area moment of inertia is quite similar to the mass moment of inertia. The only difference is that instead of the mass of the element, we have the area of the element. Therefore, I is equal to summation of ai xi square. Now let us understand the logic behind this. For this, consider a lamina in the xy plane, and at location x comma y, consider a small element of area dA is equal to dx into dy. Now imagine this lamina as a piece of bread having the cross section area A and thickness dl. The mass of this element that we have marked will be dm is equal to the density into volume, that is rho into dv. Now this volume of the small element that we are considering can be written as area into the thickness of the bread. Now if you observe carefully, for any given lamina, a homogeneous lamina, the density will be constant and the thickness also does not change. So the only variable here is the area of the element dx dy. So when you actually move from mass moment of inertia to area moment of inertia, what you are essentially doing is you are ignoring the constant density into thickness, and that's because both these terms, density and thickness, are actually defined for a 3D object and not a 2D lamina. So the moment of inertia about xx axis is given by ixx is equal to double integral, that's because we have two differential elements dx and dy, double integral of y square dx dy, and moment of inertia about the y axis is given by double integral of x square dx dy. So basically, if you observe, moment of inertia is nothing but the second moment of area about the given axis of rotation. Now let us have a quick look at the longitudinal and polar axis. So when we are dealing with a 3D object, such as our favorite bread loaf example, uh, if an object has a length L, the orientation of this object is given by the axis running throughout its length, and this axis is known as the longitudinal axis. While when you are dealing with a lamina, a 2D object such as a slice of bread, you have three important axes. The XX axis is known as the horizontal axis, the YY is the vertical axis, and the ZZ is the polar axis. The important thing to note here is the orientation of XY and Z axis is totally problem specific. The X, Y, and Z can interchange, but you must remember that the polar axis always satisfies two conditions. First, it passes through the centroid, and second, it is always normal to the cross section of the lamina. And if you combine many such lamina or bread slices, you will get a 3D object, or in this case, a bread loaf. And the longitudinal axis of this object is such that it satisfies two conditions. Firstly, it passes through the centroid of each cross section or each lamina, and second, whenever you draw a tangent to this longitudinal axis at any of these cross section, it will give you the corresponding polar axis. Now that we understand this concept of centroid and moment of inertia, let us take an example on how to calculate it. Consider a triangle aligned along the x and y direction as shown. Let the height of the triangle be h and the base length be b. Consider a small element having dimensions dx and dy at location x comma y. Now the centroid is given by x bar comma y bar, and the x coordinate of the centroid is given by this formula that we have seen earlier, and the denominator is nothing but the total area of the triangle. Also assume that this is an isosceles triangle and alpha is the angle between the sides and the vertical. So the centroid, x coordinate of the centroid, is given by the below formula. To calculate this integral, we must know the limits of x. The minimum and maximum values of x are given by y tan alpha and b minus y tan alpha respectively. And solving or simplifying this expression integral x dx within the minimum and maximum limits of x, we get the following expressions. And upon further simplification, we see that this double integral x dx dy or x dA, that is the x coordinate, the numerator of the x coordinate of the centroid, is given by these expressions. And using the relation for the angle alpha, substituting back in this equation, we shall get that the x coordinate of the centroid is nothing but x bar is equal to b by 2. And this is due to the symmetry of the triangle, that the centroid, the x coordinate of the centroid is nothing but the midpoint of the base length. Similarly, we can also calculate the y coordinate, and the formula we have seen earlier, it is quite similar to that of the x coordinate. So the numerator is given by integral of y dA or the double integral of y dx dy, and we first calculate the value of integral dx within the limits y tan alpha and d minus y tan alpha, and we substitute it back to this expression double integral dx dy into y, and integrate with respect to y between the limits 0 and h, and finally we get y bar is equal to h by 3. So summing it up, the centroid C of this triangle with respect to the shown x and y axis is given by b by 2 comma h by 3. Now let us move to the moment of inertia. The Ixx is given by, that is, the moment of inertia about the x-axis is given by integral y square dA or the double integral y square dy dx. And let us calculate, similar to the approach we used for the calculating the centroid. We first evaluate integral dx and then substitute it in the formula for Ixx, and then integrate it with respect to y between the limits 0 and h, and finally upon simplification we get Ixx as bh cube by 12. Now similarly we can calculate Iyy, that is the moment of inertia about the y-axis, which is given by integral x square dA or the double integral x square dx dy, and we shall first calculate the expression integral x square dx and then substitute it in the expression for Iyy and integrate it with respect to y between the limits 0 and h. I think the steps are quite self-explanatory because it's basic definite integration, and after further simplification we shall get a value for the Iyy, that is the moment of inertia about the y-axis, and it turns out to be Iyy is equal to 7 by 48 hb cube. Now let us look at some problems based upon what we have learned till now. The question number 1, consider a prismatic bar of length L and having a cross section as a square of side 10 mm. Suppose it is loaded axially with a load of 10 kilonewtons as shown in the figure. Calculate the stress induced in this bar. Now suppose by some manufacturing process you are changing the cross section of this prismatic bar from a square to a circle such that the length remains the same, and also there is no wastage of material, that is the mass does not change, and assuming that the loading conditions are same, calculate the change in stress. Question number 2, calculate the centroid of the lamina shown below. Consider the lamina to be a quarter or 1/4 of a circle having radius r. Now for question number 3, consider the same triangle for which we calculated the centroid and moment of inertia about the shown x and y axis. Now your job is to calculate the moment of inertia about the axis x dash and y dash such that they pass through the centroid, and also compare the results using the parallel axis theorem. For those who don't know this concept, parallel axis theorem states that the moment of inertia about any point is given by the moment of inertia about a parallel axis passing through the centroid plus AH square, where A is the area of the lamina and H is the distance between the required point, and the centroid. Try these three problems and let me know in the comments if you are able to arrive at an answer. Thank you.